I don't remember when you talked about this. It was either on a podcast or there was like a Guardian interview with you where you're just talking about cocaine, doing cocaine in England.
Yeah.
Where did I read that or I heard you talk about it? Either. Do you remember doing a lot of cocaine in London?
Not more than usual. I mean, because
you don't seem very much like a drug guy. You don't like read as a drug guy.
I was a big upper guy. Like I didn't like, I was not a downer guy. I didn't like lewds or I've done, everything a handful of times. Like heroin was just not worth it to me.
Did you ever do it? Try it?
Yeah.
And it was like,
yeah, I mean, it's okay. I never shot it. And I probably did it, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 times total.
Heroin,
yeah. And
how many times would you say you've done cocaine?
Oh, shit. Hundreds and hundreds.
Great. No one ever openly talks about cocaine.
I'm pro cocaine, but like in any drug, it has to be used in moderation. Yeah. I'm not nor was I ever like, hey,
did you read the Carl Hart book, Drug Use for Grown-Ups?
No.
He's a
I like
head
the
of
title.
He's professor at Columbia.
Yeah.
And the book came out 2 or 3 years ago, and he's like, you can do meth.
Yeah,
you can do all this. You can do heroin. You can do all this stuff.
I did lots of crystal.
Did you really?
It. Yeah.
God damn it, that's great.
I had one specific rule. It was very, very important to me, and it's why I, of all the things I've ever done, I've told this story before. I did crack in London, and
this must have been the thing I heard.
Yeah, and it was amazing, and I was with 2 friends and 3 strangers, and they were.
I hope everyone picture you
strangers.
Like smoking it out of a pipe, like a wood pipe, like a British something
like
dignified about
meerschaum or whatever that's called.
Yeah, like a Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah. There was this guy who was like a very well-known town character figure in Camden Town, which was like the hipster. This is pre-Shoreditch and all that, and pre-Hackney. So Camden Town was the place, and this guy would perform in the back of a fish and chip place, and he was kind of rockabilly, whatever, and everybody knew him. He was one of those guys, and I don't know how it came to be, but me and 2 friends and that guy, and then these 2 older, kind of funny, cackly British women. You ever read Viz? British comedy magazine? They have there's a comic called 2 Fat Slags, and they were kind of like them. Ended up at this guy's fucking tiny, shitty, dirty flat with the one thing I'll never forget is a empty fish tank with dirty dishes in it. And we smoked crack, and I could not understand these women. These women were like Northern England, so that's really tough to hear and to comprehend, and their accents, and it was just weird, right?
Yeah.
And we smoked crack all night until the 3rd time, maybe 4th time, and it was like, are we going to get some more? Because we kept buying more. And I was like, if I don't leave now, because I was doing shows. I was there. I had a month at the Soho Theater on Dean Street, Soho. And I was like, if I don't, I didn't even tell you I'm sorry, I went through all this. So my one rule is, if I ever fuck up a performance or can't make a performance because of drugs or drinking, I have to quit that thing. I have to quit. And that was my promise.
You have to quit the substance, not comedy.
The substance, yeah. If it's messing with my ability to be professional, to
Carl
deliver.
Hart's rule is you have to sleep. Anytime people have psychosis from drugs, it's because they haven't slept.
Yeah, I mean,
all the bath salt, which is a fake story anyway, but like any psychotic episode, the first question you should ask is, have you slept? And
Yeah.
the answer is always going to be no.
Yeah.
So he's like, take a sleeping pill, do whatever you have to do.
Yeah. That makes sense. I've been on, was on some benders where you just sort of come to, you not that you were unconscious, but you're doing this stuff and you're walking around and then you just sort of regain clarity and you're like, what? It's 10 a.m. I'm in Tompkins Square Park and I've got a tall boy in my hand. What am I doing? Go home. It's time to go home. But yeah, I said no. I got to go, and that was the one and only time because it was great.
Yeah,
It's great, and
that's actually a joke I think from Mr. Show. It's lie detector sketch.
Yeah.
Have you ever
Yes,
done
it's true.
crack?
What about crack? Do you ever smoke some crack?
Yes.
Dude, you're out there.
I hadn't done it at that point, but Jay had, and he was like, "Oh yeah, it's great."
Yeah, it's like the first time I've ever seen someone on television say, yeah, I think the line is, yeah, it's great. It's crack.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
It was great. It's crack. It gets you really.
but I was not a downer guy. But I love doing, again, in moderation, and I wasn't like, let's do fat
Yeah,
rails
would you
coke
do
and-
it like celebratorily, or would you just do like, I don't know, feel like doing drugs?
No, it was only as a practical function to keep staying out. So I would not do big lines, but I would have some, and I would do bumps, and we'd be out. And I was a bachelor who was kind of famous with some money in the East Village and Lower East Side with some celebrity. And why the fuck wouldn't you do that?
By the way, the locus of your celebrity. If you're gonna be like, you're extremely famous. You're Will Smith
in the
Lower East Side
yeah.
and Brooklyn.
But I mean, I was having a blast.
Yes.
And I was going out drinking and meeting girls and hanging out with friends and going to shows and so I never did like, coke where I'm going to talk like that and I'm all jittery. I would just, it was as I said to my wife, it's like a cup of coffee for your nose. I wasn't doing like stuff where I was an asshole.
If it's
or anything
enhancing, knock
Yes.
yourself out. That's
so
what
that's how I did coke. So I did a lot of coke, but I wasn't a cokehead. I wasn't a fiend. And it's also, literally I knew everybody. There was a guy at every bar. You find out who it is and you go grab a bag and that's it. It's easy. I mean, you'd go and then you go in the bathroom, do some bumps and you're like, all right, let's have another drink.
Yeah, great. Cocaine.
So yeah.
It's fantastic.
Are you sponsored by cocaine?
Hopefully, if you'll do a funny read on it. Is it safe to say you're sober?
I don't really like to, I think a lot of people do, but I just feel like my take is, I don't want to be like an advertisement for anything. I just think that life is so tricky that you just never know. So I just don't want anyone, I try to be open about my experiences. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I certainly was somebody who was, notorious and infamous for getting high. And obviously that's not my lifestyle anymore. But I definitely identify with that typology of person or something. I don't know that, like the brain ever changes or the way you hear music or something really changes. So in that sense, it's always sort of like, in other words, I'm somebody who still needs to be kind of like walking these streets at 5 a.m., sort of, just thinking thoughts in the middle of the night, almost like alone and, or within the company of strangers. And just to say, and in that sense, I don't know that I'm fully, it's like I'm a changed person in terms of I'm no longer like self-destructive in these same sort of violent ways that land you in, hospitals and DUIs and that kind of a thing.
When you think about that being like that, is it about self-acceptance? Is it about you feel like, do you ever think about like your motives for, because you're like a legit interesting, I don't know anyone that's kind of like you.
Thank you. The other thing that's so weird is, I don't know if you're getting older, but I've been getting older. So what's happening now
come to LA.
Is
we slowed it down.
All this kind of shenanigans when we sort of like, even when my mind sort of tells me a story about myself, it's so, connected to this like great event that are like my years as a junkie. And really in the sort of like history of that timeline, that's now like a blip in the axis of, you know what I mean? There's like sort of 25 years before, now there's like almost, 20 years later, which is weird because I'm 22, but it's sort of weird because that it's such a sort of seminal event. But I think, so in a way, I no longer see it as being so much about drugs and alcohol per se, but more almost like I was at Tisch, like a film and philosophy double major. I was like skipped my senior year of high school. So I was there by the time I was like 16 years old. And in that time, I was already sort of a philosophy major. Like those were my interests.
At 16.
And I think that the truth of my story was more like I'd seen so much, fucked up shit as a kid, alcoholic, crazy parents and that kind of a thing. And I'd already been a child actor. I was never a child star. And I think probably because of like my...
And you never will be.
Again.
Do you hear me?
And God damn it.
Not if you keep this silliness up.
And I think probably because I always have like big hair and like this personality or whatever, and my accent, it seems like I'm such an extrovert, but in fact, I think probably as a kid, it was more that I was cataloging things like a witness, sort of more like and maybe it was just like a coping mechanism, but almost more like a writer or a filmmaker. Like I was sort of watching vignettes because they were weird and traumatizing and fucked up. And there'd be like 60s music blasting from these crazy parents. So I would sort of see them as sequences and had like an imagination because I was already in the language of sort of like on camera. We make, we sort of tell stories. And I got sort of, famous, like American Pie, Slums of Beverly Hills. And then I sort of like dropped out of college and sort of aggressively like dropped out of that life because I found it to be not where it was at on this very sort of like teenage, almost like Jack Kerouac, Bukowski level that I was like, what is this thing? Like the top of the mountain is just, like fame and like sycophants and free clothes and what the fuck is this? Like that's where, my parents had put me in that business. And so it just didn't add up. And I don't think I had the sort of proper support network to say, no, this is just an aspect of self. I was very entangled with like the artist's trip of, either this is a substantive life or it's not. So I think I really went under into like this sort of belly of the beast to see how the other half live in a way that was very like pseudo-intellectual teenager who's obsessed with a certain kind of literature that is traditionally very male, lone wolf, like expat. I want to see what it's like sort of, boozy under the skin. And it's just
non-filter cigarettes.
And then I think almost like a narc who went in too deep. It was like the nature of addiction.
So you really look back on it like almost you were just like, I'm just see what this is like just for a second.
Not even for a second, but more I was like this trip of like this sort of ego trip of I did it. You know what I mean? Congratulations, American Pie and magazines. And
as you said, American Pie, I remember thinking when I saw you that you were in it, I was surprised you did it.
Yeah.
I was like, I was surprised they got you. I was like, they got Natasha Lyonne. Wow. Like the good for them. And I was like, I just thought you were a cool indie person.
And I think probably I was just sort of confused, like sort of like now it's very fun being, a girl just because it's sort of like time has caught up or something.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
The women in their 30s are unlike, like I'll meet girls and I'll be like, women couldn't be like you 20 years ago.
Then it was more, I just think, I was sort of like, what is this whole gig, And anyway, so I think like a narc that was in too deep, I sort of, drugs are catching. So I kind of like, they work.
To you if you're weak.
Yeah. And then it was sort of like the journey out was really the dark nights of the soul because it was not like, she's back. You know what I mean? It was a whole fucking, extravaganza of, you better go on this spiritual quest because you've got nothing else, kid. Like that was really where I saw that I had burnt down the whole house. And then now it's like I've spent almost 20 years sort of rebuilding but almost then it was more like a choice to kind of get back into all these things. So all the relationships sort of changed of, people like, Maya Rudolph and Amy Poehler that I knew back then. It was suddenly like Amy and I were co-creating a show, or Maya and I were like making a production company, or it just felt more, okay, there's a different way to do this whole game that makes sense for someone like me, and that all that experience isn't wasted. But anyway, just to say that it's weird now looking back at all that stuff and the language in which you have to talk about it to make it make sense. Sort of, like season 1 of Orange is the New Black, I had to sort of talk about it in a way that would be, palatable to people sort of reaccepting that. It's all so weird when you talk about the nature of humanity and how we don't fully give ourselves like the full breadth of the human experience is all I mean. I say all that only knowing that we know each other, and part of, the excitement of you doing this is that you're somebody who does see things that way. So that's all.
So that was a thank you.
Yeah, kind of.
And then I went downtown and somebody handed me this Jamba Juice filled with psilocybin mushrooms, and I drank the whole thing. And I was not right in the head for a while after
How long?
that. It took about 13 years to kind of come down off of that.
That if anyone had paused it and said how long, I wouldn't have even put 13 years as one of the options for how long it took. 13 years.
13 years
All
to
right, what's
snap
the
out of
first 8 hours of after you drink the Jamba Juice? So you're you.
Yeah.
You're a successful comedian.
Yeah.
You're famous. You've done shows. I'm the one that I want. All the popular specials, and then you kind of go and you're living a extreme alternative life.
Yeah.
You start some kind of weird business. Look it up if you want. And the woman tanks it, and then you're furious.
Furious.
You go downtown. Where downtown?
It was this party that I had. I used to have one of those egg chairs, that has like stereos inside. It's very cool.
Sure.
Mid-century thing. So I gave it to this artist, and he made an installation of it. And so I was going to the gallery to see it. And I don't remember who it was. Somebody just handed me a psilocybin drink, and I just drank the whole thing. And it's like
knowing what it was,
and
being
full well.
Was this breaking your sobriety, or had you done
totally breaking my sobriety? Totally
over after 10 years.
Yeah, total 7 years. Totally, but not only that, I wasn't eating sugar. I wasn't eating.
So it was a lot.
It was everything, and nothing processed. Everything just went down. And after that, I just didn't go. I was like out for 13 years. Out of my mind.
Recent. Fairly recently.
Well,
16?
So 2016, I finally came to my senses, or was brought to my senses.
What were the 13 years like?
I was just drinking and on drugs.
Oh, you went back into
a crazy addiction, and probably still high from the psilocybin mushrooms. Like, probably still out of it. Like, I think that.
What do you think it did to you? If you could guess.
It was just like I had lived so rigidly, like as this monastic life for 7 years, and thinking like I'm going to be.
Which in and of itself is its own
crazy
addiction and
totally
its own
crazy.
like. I like it. I like fasting. I like the Catholic in me likes the sort of self-flagellation part of it.
Yeah.
And you really did it.
I did it, and then. It was.
Did you
the
feel
other way.
better, or do you even remember how you felt physically? Is it when people go, "Do you feel better because I'm vegan?" I'm like, not really.
I did.
You did feel better.
I did. I think that there was things about it that I thought was really remarkable. What was also weird was things that were very wrong, which were like I didn't realize. Like I stopped having a period for several years during that, like which is really weird.
Yeah.
That shouldn't happen, especially in my 20s at that time. I just stopped really understanding what everything was like made for. Like I was so like outside of the realm of being able to do anything.
But you're still a comedian, right?
Yeah. I'm still doing comedy.
And it's going great?
Yeah, it's going great.
But off stage, it's like...
Just so rigid. You couldn't eat
Were
anything.
They in Tupperware? Like, or
everything
glass?
Everything was in like, well, probably Tupperware, plastic. So that I didn't have like a thought about like recycling or anything like that, or plastic. But you just couldn't go to restaurants. You couldn't have anything at a club. There was just nothing there for you. Anything possible.
Did you feel righteous?
No, I just felt so removed from any real ability to engage with society.
But did that make you feel righteous, or you just felt alienated?
Probably alienated. A bit righteous at first, but then alienated. But then I was also around people who were doing the same thing. So all my friends were also trying to like be raw vegans as well.
Yeah. I mean, whenever I walk past a raw vegan place, I'm like, what's that place on West 3rd in New York? It was like Rainbow. It was by NYU, but it was there forever. Mm-hmm. And the thing about raw vegans, they don't look healthy.
No,
none of them look healthy. They look pallid and sad.
It's just a life of strife. And I was doing a lot of yoga, and then I thought, I'm going to go and I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And then I was taking all of these classes from Bikram,
actual
Bikram, who was so mean.
It's not what the documentary said. Okay.
He was so mean.
The women are the trash?
Yeah, I pick them from trash and give them life.
And so abusive to all the students and everybody trying to like become a teacher. And the place stunk like...
In New York or LA?
In LA. Just stunk like,
sweaty people.
Asses.
And feces.
And lots of feces.
Ladies.
So much.
Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, you're interesting. You've never not been interesting to me. I don't even know that.
Yeah.
And tell me the first 8 hours of the mushrooms.
Well, I was so high, and then I came back to my house, and everybody was kind of like looking at me, like my husband was looking like, that's so weird that you did that. And then my animals were just really scared. I had 3 dogs, and they were like all like, something's very wrong. And
they would just avoided you?
Yeah, they just didn't want to talk to me. They didn't want to be petted. They didn't want anything to do with me. And I was just out of it. And it took me a long time to sort of not be really altered from that trip. But then it just gave me the permission to do any drug and eat anything after that.
And was any of it enjoyable?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing with drugs and alcohol and food. It's like...
It's enjoyable, but it's also not, because it's just like, it's enjoyable for the initial first part, but then it just becomes really like, you want more, or you're trying to not be hungover or whatever.
Oh, it's all a reaction to the thing you did most recently.
Yeah. So it's just trying to get that balance of whatever chemicals, right? And I could never do it. I could never quite achieve what was good about the high that I remembered, what was good about this, what was good about this. And
hey, did you like that? Did you like that? Yeah, did you like it though? You want more? Don't want to work? Would rather watch videos of me grab-assing with people? First of all, go up here to subscribe, and then go up here to watch more clips. This is like when the weatherman says there's a high pressure system coming in. I'm not really used to the green screen.